Tomorrow's enhanced risk for severe storms in northern Vermont and upstate New York is extremely rare for July. Forecasters say a strong tornado or two cannot be ruled out in Vermont and upstate New York Tuesday. And training thunderstorms are forecast to roll through the same 5-state Midwest corridor through the end of July. Point is, this storm pattern is running at a genuinely unusual level for the middle of summer. Tonight we cover the Vermont enhanced risk, the Wyoming triple threat, the Texas flooding, and the Bertha signal. Let's start with today because the SPC has active outlooks across 2 separate regions of the country. A marginal risk of severe thunderstorms covers approximately 18.5 million people across the southeast. The primary day 1 zone covers Florida, including Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, and Fort Lauderdale today. Isolated damaging winds are the main threat as a weak mid-level trough sits over the deep south today. Florida gets the sharpest focus as afternoon heating steepens lapse rates in any storm that fires today. Montana also carries a marginal risk for high-base thunderstorms capable of strong to severe gusts this afternoon. Arizona continues to see isolated monsoon thunderstorms, especially across the southern portions of the state today. A mesoscale convective vortex is spinning near Birmingham, Alabama, generating scattered storm activity in the southeast. Georgia and South Carolina need to watch for isolated damaging winds from any stronger storm cluster today. Dale in Toledo has watched the southeast and said, "Tom, cold air damming is the key today." And Dale, that CAD boundary limits how far inland the worst storm energy can penetrate in the southeast. So coastal southeast communities face the higher risk, while some inland areas may stay on the quieter side. Today's severe weather stays relatively contained, but the flash flooding story is serious across multiple areas. A Del Rio, Tennessee. Flash flood triggered a landslide July 13th, and rescue teams extracted 5 people safely. That landslide rescue is the real consequence of training thunderstorms hitting already saturated ground repeatedly. The mid-Atlantic flood threat is easing today, but migrating south and west toward the Gulf Coast and Texas. Central Texas and the Gulf Coast are now the primary focus for heavy rainfall from Monday through Wednesday. The Weather Prediction Center has highlighted Texas Hill Country for a potential 6 to 10 inches of rainfall. 6 to 10 inches in the Texas Hill Country creates extremely dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding. San Antonio, Austin, and western Texas need to monitor flood watches very closely through Wednesday. Repeated storms in those areas lead to rapidly rising water levels well before any warning arrives. Margaret in Lake Charles is watching this Gulf Coast flooding setup and said, "Tom, this one is concerning." She said, "Tom." When Gulf moisture stalls against a slow front for multiple days, the flooding compounds fast. And Margaret is right on the flooding science because that pattern produces the most dangerous flash flood totals. The Carolinas and southern Appalachians also continue to see repeated rounds of heavy rain through Monday morning. Flash flooding risk stays elevated as the ground has been at or near saturation for several consecutive days. Burn scar areas in the Intermountain West also face localized flash flooding risk as monsoonal moisture moves through. So enhanced risk Vermont Tuesday, training storms 5 states, Wyoming triple threat, and Texas up to 10 inches. Now into the Tuesday story, because this is the one turning heads across the forecast community today. The Storm Prediction Center issued a Day 2 enhanced risk for northern Vermont and adjacent northern New York. An enhanced risk in July for Vermont is extraordinarily rare and reflects how unusual this pattern truly is. The enhanced risk zone covers 474,000 people, including Burlington, Vermont, and Plattsburgh. A slight risk extends through much of Maine, covering 1.1 million people, including Bangor and Augusta. Forecasters say dew points will exceed 70 degrees Fahrenheit from western New York into western Maine Tuesday. 70-degree dew points in Maine in mid-July create an atmosphere loaded with moisture and instability, unusually. Mucape values above 2,000 joules per kilogram are forecast with greater than 50% probability Tuesday. Frank in Springfield follows energy setups and said, "Tom, 2,000 mucape for Maine in July is wild." And Frank, effective layer wind shear exceeding 50 knots turns that instability into organized and dangerous storms. Multiple clusters of severe storms are expected to develop by late afternoon and grow upscale through Tuesday evening. These storm clusters will grow into linear systems racing across New England during the late evening and overnight. Primary threat is damaging straight-line winds, but the SPC explicitly mentioned the possibility of a strong tornado. Forecasters said there is enough low-level curvature to support a tornado threat, including a strong tornado or two. A strong tornado in Vermont or upstate New York in mid-July would be an extraordinarily rare event. The most intense activity is expected during the evening hours, making this a critical nighttime weather event. Nighttime severe weather is more dangerous because people are asleep, with far less time to act on warnings. 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts are the broadest hazard across the wide risk area Tuesday. Large hail, including possibly baseball-sized hail, cannot be ruled out near the core of the enhanced risk zone. Western and central Montana also carries a marginal risk for severe gusts and marginally severe hail Tuesday. Quebec and Ottawa in Canada are also in a significant severe weather setup Tuesday afternoon with tornado potential. Storms will race through areas like Bangor, Berlin, New Hampshire, and Portland, Maine during the evening hours. Earl in western South Dakota tracks rare July setups and said, Tom, the Vermont enhanced risk is special. Earl is right, because 50 knots of shear with 2,000 mu cape does not happen for Maine. If you are in northern Vermont, New Hampshire, or Maine, Tuesday evening is the time to be inside. Let's shift to Wyoming, because that state faces heat, fire danger, and dry lightning all at once. The National Weather Service has issued an extreme heat warning for many areas of central and western Wyoming. Temperatures across Wyoming today range from 90 degrees to over 104 Fahrenheit, depending on elevation. And simultaneously, a red flag warning is in effect for Wyoming, extending all the way through Wednesday evening. Relative humidity in that fire warning zone is dropping to just 10 to 15% during afternoon hours. Wind gusts of 25 to 35 miles per hour with low humidity create a fire nightmare setup. Extreme heat, low humidity, and strong winds are flat out the perfect combination for rapid, dangerous fire spread. And here is the added element making Wyoming's situation even more alarming through Tuesday afternoon and evening. Dry lightning, where strikes occur without significant rainfall, is forecast for Wyoming on Tuesday, July 14th. Extreme heat warning plus red flag fire danger plus dry lightning all in one state is rare. Sandra in Alexandria watches fire weather and said, Tom, Wyoming is in one seriously tough spot right now. And Sandra is right, because any wildfire ignition under those conditions spreads rapidly before any crew can respond. North Dakota has an extreme heat warning today with heat index values reaching 100 to 110. The Dakotas are building toward a rapid onset drought risk as extreme heat combines with very little rainfall. So enhanced risk Vermont Tuesday, training storms 5 states, Wyoming triple threat, and Texas up to 10 inches. The broader heat dome picture Tuesday, July 14th is when dangerous heat peaks from the Great Basin east. Tuesday marks the dangerous heat peak stretching from the Great Basin all the way to the northern plains. Salt Lake City. Utah is approaching its all-time record high temperature of 107 degrees on Tuesday. Billings, Montana may challenge its record of 108 degrees before the cold front arrives Monday night. A cold front cools Montana Monday, but the northern plains continue to bake well into the coming week. So while Billings gets front relief, Bismarck and Fargo and Pierre stay locked in their extreme heat warnings. Near 100 degrees in Minneapolis, and Fargo is expected by Thursday as the dome migrates steadily east. By Wednesday and Thursday, the dome pushes into the Ohio Valley and East Coast, bringing heat eastward. Dale in Toledo watches the dome migrate east as his region sits in the heat dome path midweek. He said, Tom, Columbus and Indianapolis and Cincinnati are all going to feel this heat surge by Wednesday. Dale is right on the money. That dome does not disappear. It simply moves east toward his region. Ontario, Canada, is also in the heat event, with Tuesday marking the peak of the Canadian heat event. So here's where I want to hear directly from you about your city and your situation tonight. Tell me your city in the comments and which story. Enhanced risk, heat, or flooding is affecting you. And tell me what region you want the most detailed forecast breakdown for in the upcoming videos. Maximum temperatures near 37 Celsius are expected in southwestern Ontario and the greater Golden Horseshoe. Margaret in Lake Charles is watching the heat dome extend east because it will shift Gulf moisture patterns. She said, Tom, when the heat dome parks over the Ohio Valley, it shifts where storm energy flows. Now, NOAA has issued a significant training thunderstorm warning that deserves serious attention across the Midwest. Training thunderstorms are forecast to roll through the same 5-state corridor through the end of July. That 5-state corridor is Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, the heart of the American Midwest. Training thunderstorms means storm after storm hits the same location over hours or sometimes multiple days. These training storms bring flash flooding, damaging winds, large hail, and intense lightning in repeated doses. Frank in Springfield is on the edge of this corridor and said, Tom, these repeated patterns are exhausting. He said, Tom, the same communities keep getting hit and the ground never gets a chance to recover. Frank nails it because that sustained loading turns a storm event into a multi-day dangerous flood emergency. Minneapolis, Des Moines, Lincoln, and Omaha all need elevated flash flood awareness through the rest of July. That is a multi-week alert window for 5 states, reflecting just how unusual this summer's overall pattern is. If you live in the 5-state Midwest corridor, check your local forecast every single day through July. Now let's talk about the tropical signal, because the NOAA has been escalating this for several days. A cold front is expected to stall in the northern Gulf of Mexico in the coming days. When a cold front stalls over warm Gulf waters, energy gets trapped and tropical development becomes more possible. The NOAA spotted this signal first, and the full Euro ensemble is now confirming the idea. There is a growing 40 to 50% chance of tropical development in the Gulf over 10 days. Some Euro model runs show a potential named tropical storm in the Gulf by around July 20th. If that tropical storm develops and stalls, flooding rainfall for Texas and Louisiana would increase significantly. Texas Hill Country is already looking at a potential 6 to 10 inches from Monday through Wednesday alone. A stalling tropical system on top of those rains would make the Texas flooding situation dramatically more serious. Earl in western South Dakota said, Tom, a Gulf tropical system stalling over Texas is a real concern. He said, Tom, once a Gulf tropical system parks and stalls, the flooding can reach historic totals quickly. And Earl is exactly right, because that is the specific pattern that produces catastrophic and life-threatening floods. Florida Panhandle communities from New Orleans to Tampa need to watch the Gulf developments through the weekend. Euro ensemble members that do develop this show some reaching tropical storm, with a few touching hurricane strength. So this is not a certainty, but it is a growing, legitimate signal that demands Gulf Coast attention. Beyond the tropical signal, the broader pattern remains active through the second half of July with multiple systems. Still tracking enhanced risk Vermont Tuesday, training storms 5 states, Texas 10 inches. And Bertha signal. After Tuesday, a brief Wednesday pause arrives before the next round builds from the northwest all over again. Thursday and Friday, a new low pressure develops on the northern plains, bringing another Midwest severe weather round. The European model supports a significant Midwest and Ohio Valley severe weather event through next weekend. Minneapolis, Iowa, and Wisconsin could see all-hazard severe weather through Saturday and into Sunday of next weekend. A big wind threat from Alabama to New England is possible early the week after that storm system. Dale in Toledo said his Ohio Valley region will feel the heat dome midweek and weekend storms together. He said, Tom, Columbus and Cincinnati need to prepare for heat by Wednesday and storms by next weekend. So the pattern through July remains active, with barely a pause between the major storm systems ahead. The tropical signal, the training storms, and the weekend system all point toward an active end to July. Residents from the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes need elevated awareness for the next 2 weeks. Margaret in Lake Charles is watching the late July tropical plus storm pattern because it directly impacts her. She said, Tom, this combination of tropical signal plus weekend storms plus training storms is a complex pattern. Let's do a rapid city breakdown so you know where your area stands in this complex multi-threat situation. Burlington, Vermont, and Plattsburgh, New York face the enhanced risk zone Tuesday evening with tornado potential. Bangor, Augusta, Lewiston, and Waterville, Maine all sit in the Tuesday slight risk for severe weather. Anyone in northern Vermont, New Hampshire, or Maine needs to be inside with weather alerts on Tuesday evening. Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, and Fort Lauderdale are in today's marginal risk for isolated damaging wind gusts. Atlanta and northern Georgia, including Cobb County, are under active storm warnings today through Monday morning. Del Rio, Tennessee, had a flash flood with a landslide July 13th, and conditions remain elevated through Monday. Houston, Galveston, and Gulf Coast communities need active flood preparation through at least Wednesday afternoon. San Antonio, Austin, and western Texas face the most significant and dangerous flood threat as the week progresses. Salt Lake City approaching its 107-degree all-time record on Tuesday with the dome at peak. Billings, Montana, targeting 108 degrees Tuesday before the cold front delivers Monday night relief. Cheyenne and Casper under extreme heat warning combined with red flag fire danger and dry lightning risk Tuesday. Bismarck and Fargo and Pierre under extreme heat warning with heat index values reaching 110 degrees. Minneapolis, Madison, Des Moines, and Lincoln in the training storm corridor with elevated flash flood risk all month. Sandra in Alexandria, Virginia is watching the Tuesday through Wednesday heat dome expansion toward the mid-Atlantic. She said, Tom, D.C. and Baltimore need to watch Wednesday through Thursday as the heat dome arrives. And Sandra, the I-95 corridor from Baltimore to New York enters the heat dome zone by Wednesday night. Leave your city and tell me which story, heat, flooding, or the Bertha signal, is yours tonight. And drop below if you want the next detailed breakdown to focus on your specific region or city. Every comment shapes what I cover next, and every single one gets read to guide the next video. Dale, Margaret, Frank, Earl, and Sandra all said the same thing about July's unusually complex weather pattern. They said, Tom, this is not a normal July, and every region has something serious to be tracking. Stay current on every watch and warning because this pattern moves fast and gives very little lead time. Enhanced risk Vermont Tuesday. Training storms 5 states through month end. Texas, 10 inches. And Bertha growing. That is where America's weather stands July 13th. And knowing what is coming is how you stay ready. The heat is not done. The storms are lined up. And July is not finished making its mark.